I just was told by a friend about this group. I didn't really know anybody that I could talk to. I'm just not alone, and it's so overwhelming and so painful to have to go through this. Just the fact that you hear that other people went through the same thing and they care about you and they call you and they're kind to you when we go out to lunch or we do something. That's all. People care.
Someone says, "I know how you feel." They truly do. Every parent says it's never going to happen to my child.
Hi, my name is Linda Hudman, and my son, Anthony James Hudman, we called him AJ, passed away November 24th, 2014. He was 22 years old.
JP Cassignol is my child. He was 24 years old. He died a year ago in July. And I'm Amy Cassignol.
My name is Debbie Gaffner, and my son is Kyle Gaffner. He died August 20th of 2015, and he was 27.
I'm Jimena Ryan, and I'm Casey Ryan's mother. Died January 30th, 2015. He was 25.
Talk a little bit about what you saw from your child that maybe made you suspicious, or were you completely caught off guard by this?
I was caught off guard. He had graduated from college, and I noticed some money was going out of our account. And he admitted to that, and then he admitted he was addicted to Oxycontin, which I didn't know what that was. Then he told me it was pain medicine, which he had gotten from a ACL surgery when he was in high school, and then again when he was in college. So when he told me he was an addict, and that he had researched it and he tried his best to fight it on his own, but now he needs help. But I was almost reassured that he told me it was pain medicine. I thought, oh, that'll be easy to take care of. Thank you for coming to me. Little did I know it would be the next 3 years of hell.
To tell you the truth, the fact that he was addicted to heroin caught us off guard. Looking back, maybe it shouldn't have caught us off guard. There were signs. For a previous year and a half before that, been arrested for having 2 Oxycontins. And we thought, come on, Oxycontins? We didn't think that was really serious. We thought it was actually ridiculous that he was caught and went to jail for a night for 2 Oxycontins and went, okay. And we didn't think that it would be a big problem. But again, the signs that we were arguing about these signs, but we as my husband and I weren't coming to a common conclusion. Money was missing, jewelry was missing, and those are the signs that we missed. There's the common signs that somebody has an addiction. But basically, my husband called me one morning. He came to pick up my son for work and take him to work with him. And he called me and said, AJ is in the emergency room. He had a heroin overdose. And I said, what? What? Are you kidding me? A heroin overdose? That's when we found out about his problem.
Heroin. That word was never a part of our vocabulary.
Looking back, we could see that there were signs that he had an addiction, but we never would have thought it would have been heroin. Never in a million years. So that's how we found out that he was addicted to heroin.
Casey's addiction started when he was in middle school, at about the age of 12. So Casey died at the age of 25, so he struggled with addiction that escalated through the years. What happened at the end with Casey is that he had a very bad foot injury. He was in a lot of pain. He was 25. He was not going to go through this without pain control and medication, and that is what triggered the worst relapse of his life, which immediately segued into heroin use. So put him back in treatment at Hazelden Betty Ford to detox and to go back into the intensive outpatient. And what happened, because the relapse was so strong, I had my mother living with me in hospice here, and he wanted to continue his outpatient treatment here and make sure that my mother didn't die while he was in recovery. You know, against better judgment, we acquiesced and let him come back. He drove home from Minneapolis on a Wednesday, and Friday he was dead.
He had been living in South Carolina for about a year, and he moved back the October before he passed away in August. And when he was on his way back, his friend texted me and said, I hope Kyle gets the help he needs. And I texted back and said, what do you mean? And he called me and he said that Kyle had been using heroin. And when he came back home, we confronted him and he agreed to go talk to someone about it. So we took him to the hospital. The doctors didn't feel that he needed to go into any kind of treatment to detox, that he wasn't physically addicted to it. Fast forward 10 months later, we had no idea that he was still using, and he died of an overdose.
The problem came when he had to come back to his community, to normal living, to connection with other human beings, to feeling, like he could survive in the regular world. He often told me that he felt like a prisoner of his apartment, that he could not leave because it was everywhere. I always, believed that somehow if he would just decide to do this, that he could get better, that he would get better. And it isn't until you are fully, educated and made aware and engaged in this, this battle for your child's life. And it happened to me when I went to Hazelden, that I finally understood that this was a disease, that it wasn't a choice. And I understood the progression, and I got educated about what happens in the brain and how long it takes the brain to actually be able to recover. And I realized that until Casey was able to stitch together 3 to 5 years of sustainable recovery, probably wasn't going to happen. This is a different world we're living in right now. This epidemic is epic.
I mean, if I would have known back then what I know now with Kyle, when I was told that, about the brain needing to rewire and the amount of time that it takes, I really would have done something differently, because I thought I was doing the right thing to get him again to counseling and find out why he was depressed and what was upsetting him, not understanding that part of that was from doing heroin previously, and what we found out after he died, he was still doing heroin.
People think, rehab or treatment, that's the cure-all. It is not. It is so difficult to explain rehab. First of all, insurance, even if you have insurance, they only pay for 7 days, and as we have learned, opiate addiction especially takes 3 to 5 years of sustainability. And when you talk about long-term treatment with insurance companies, that's maximum 30 days. And I was told by my insurance company that, and JP was begging to go back to rehab. He knew he was going to relapse the first time around. This is before I found out he had switched to heroin. He was still using opiates. They told me that in order to pay for another extended rehab, which was 7 to 14 days, that he would have to relapse again. So what kind of message is that? He wanted so much to get better, and instead he turned to heroin. If the insurance companies won't pay for treatment for an extended period of time, and abstinence up to 3 to 5 years is the only way that the brain can heal from opiate, I don't want to say abuse, but opiate use, we have to look at maybe a new system. Not jail, but a drug jail where they can sustain abstinence from drugs, but also get treatment, but also be out of the community. A woman from NIH who does research on addiction, and she takes images of the brain, and she said something to me during our interview that just really resonated with me. And she said, this is the first health epidemic that was actually caused by the health industry. And so I am still a little bitter, or very angry about that this has been caused by the health industry, but they won't help us fix it. The most they've done is tell doctors don't prescribe so much. That's the most they've done. But I have a friend whose daughter just got prescribed 90 Percocet for a tooth extraction. 90. When I asked other doctors about that, they were floored. They said, that's way too much, A, and B, we have just been trained. You just don't. You give 2 or 3, and if they need more, they have to go back and get 2 or 3 more. But where are the drug manufacturers now? Where are they helping me now? They got him addicted, but they're not here to help me now. I don't know what the answer is.
By the time we figured out my son was addicted to heroin, it was as if he had been caught by a tsunami, and he was trying to swim his way out of a tsunami. And we were pulling him, trying to get him out of that tsunami. He knew, it was in his eyes, that he might not survive this. He was in a struggle for his very life, and we knew it as parents, and we saw it in his eyes. And when he did finally die, my father said, you know, I think at the point that he was at, he was more afraid to continue living than he was of dying. And that when none of us were offended.
Our kids weren't struggling anymore. That's the only thing we can take from their death that brings us a little bit of peace, is that they're not in that struggle.
I know in the state of Maryland, the laws are very relaxed with charges for drug dealers, and I think they need to be way stricter. And I also think that we need more law enforcement to be able to get involved. The ones that are involved are very involved, but I think we need to have even more, because it is such a huge problem in Montgomery County.
Right now, it's akin to murder, in my view. I wish there was a jail where the kids were basically, you know, protected from themselves, but also be, you know, fed and provided and cared for in a loving, humane way, to say, this isn't punishment. This is, yes, you're holding, you can't leave. You know, you have to stay because you need 2 years, 3 years of sustained recovery. But while you're here, we are going to empower and strengthen you. When I hear these other stories of these kids that have been star athletes, that have been honor students, that got through high school, that went to college, they're young adults in the middle of what is supposed to be, you know, their great time in life, where they're going to build a family, where they're going to fall in love, where they're going to, you know, have children. The threat that's out there right now, the epidemic that we are all living, that nobody is immune from, that has no, doesn't discriminate.
Because this is an epidemic that was fed by the health industry, it's not a racial epidemic, it is a socioeconomic epidemic. It's the kids and families who actually had insurance that were affected by this, because they're the ones that got the opiates in the first place. They're the ones that were fed that by their doctors. No problem, you know, here, take it. And then they're the ones that, when they realized this is a problem, pulled those opiates back, made restrictions. That's when the heroin started flowing into all of our communities.
When your child dies of heroin addiction, who wouldn't think that they did something terribly wrong as a parent? Some of us had careers. I homeschooled my child from kindergarten to 9th grade. Actually, I turned my life upside down to be his mother. Our children still died of this addiction. But I did learn something from this happening, and that is that to spend time with your child, give them your undivided attention as they grow up through the years, to find joy in sharing their life with them. It's not something that you do when you have time. That time that you spend with your child, one-on-one, enjoying them, it's really an emergency. And I didn't know that until after my son was gone.
And one of the things we all had in common is we had wished we had more access to their phone records and their bank accounts, because that is the biggest sign. I guess the final thing is just, you can still love your child, and there's a fine line between, you know, supporting your child and enabling your child. But you have to put the trust on the shelf. There's no room for trust in addiction. There is no room. You must put that trust. That doesn't mean you're putting your love aside, but you cannot trust them.
I think now that I know what some of the signs are, you know, with him sleeping a lot, always having an upset stomach with the antacids, constipation. I know that's part of it. I just didn't, I thought it had a lot to do with his depression.
It's not only the addict that's affected, but everybody in the family is affected, and the whole family dynamic is affected. And this beast is bigger than anything you can ever imagine. The same way that the community, you know, wraps its heart and its resources and its love and its outpouring of support and love around families who have kids that are battling cancer, or somebody in their family that's battling any other disease, and people don't feel isolated, they feel supported, they feel comforted, they feel connected, they feel, you know, it's the same thing. But that's not with addiction. With addiction, everybody feels that they are, you know, somehow Somebody's done everything, something wrong.
It's so important what to tell people if they have a friend or a relative, if they know someone is taking pills or doing heroin or any type of drug. You are not doing them or their family a favor by keeping it to yourself. You really need to reach out and tell someone.
Get rid of the drugs in your house. Do not have money lying around that you don't account for, that you don't have locked up.
When my son had his first overdose, and this was one of 5 overdoses he had in the year 2013, one of his friends came and to see him there, and he had known that my son had a problem and hadn't told us. So, maybe we could have done something different, but that happened to us as well. His friends knew but didn't tell us.
There is just such a devastating spiritual, emotional toll that this disease takes on the struggling addict, as well as the families that are trying to, save them and help them. And a lot of the problem comes because the parents don't understand what they're battling. They don't get what monster has taken over their child. It's bigger than them. It's bigger than us.